Morning, kid. What's going on?
How are we doing today?
First edition of polished versus disheveled. I worked last night, and I'm still behind the bar a few nights a week, so I'm keeping it real, seeing what's going on the streets. And woke up this morning about 6 o'clock. I heard the rain, rolled over, woke up, and it's like, oh, 8 o'clock. We're supposed to be on camera, I think, but here it is, baby. This is as good as it gets right here.
All right. So, I wake up this morning and obviously we're still looking at a bill that needs to be passed or should be passed for $2.1 trillion of relief. What's that mean to the US dollar?
It's getting trashed.
Okay. I couldn't have said it any better myself. So what do you mean? How would, if I were to describe that to my kids, how do I make them understand that printing money is not a good thing?
Well, I mean, right now it's a necessity given the circumstances. I don't know if we have any other parachute we can pull, but at the same time, longer term, we've known this for years. This is nothing new. I think the real challenge is, like you said, is trying to say it in plain English, because you can get into all this technical terminology and everything. But bottom line is the dollar's being weakened. It doesn't buy as much as it used to. So the costs of real estate are going up. The costs of the stock, the stock market hitting all-time highs. Well, we're printing money like crazy. Interest rates are at zero. What do you think is going to happen? But again, there I said, say it in plain English, and I started talking about all this technical shit. So
well, that's what I mean. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some more of the fireside chats with my boys and start talking to them about finances and just some of the fundamentals. And I guess if I were speaking to them, I would say, let's pretend that you're in the middle of a desert and I've got a bottle of water and you've got $50. How much is that bottle of water worth to you right now? And they'd probably say, I'll give you the $50 for the bottle of water. But what if I had a case of water and it's just you? Are you going to give me $50 for that bottle of water?
Sure.
Probably not. It's probably going to decline in value in your eyes, because you have other people that can give it to you and you can get another one, for less money. My big question here is, how are we going to get out of this mess? And I know we've talked about this before. What are the different options?
How are we going to get out of this mess? I think, how do we get through this mess? And what is it going to look like as we're going through the storm, basically? Because there's no getting out of this. There's a getting through it. But what does that look like? And I don't think we can answer that question right now.
But what are the different options that, we've talked about it in the past?
Austerity.
Austerity, yeah, default, right? So could we default?
Well, I mean, is the reserve currency of the world? Good question. But
yeah, but so let's say if we did, I look at Social Security, I look at pensions, I look at all these different things that are out there that we have these obligations to, and they're costing us a lot of money. If we default, is it an option to default on these things to get ourselves back in the black?
Is it an option? Well, everything's on the table at this point. It seems as though, because look at what's going on. So it's unprecedented. And that's a word everyone gets tired of hearing. They get tired of hearing the new normal, all these new phrases, but that's just where we're at. I don't know. Again, for me, I've never seen anything like this before. So
no, me either.
So
I don't see it as an option. I think that once somebody signed a contract and made an obligation to somebody else, like if somebody were getting into the prison system, being a corrections officer, and they were told back, 20, 25 years ago, or let's say 15 years ago, that if they put 20 years in, then they were going to get X. They signed a contract. They're obligated, I believe, to follow through with that. So I don't see it as an option. How about raising taxes?
Well, but at this point, I mean, we're already losing, like use Connecticut as an example, we're already losing residents, even though everyone talks about all these people coming into the state from New York or Boston because of the pandemic. But at the same time, like we're still going through a net loss of population, according to what I've read. Who knows? But So if we're going to raise taxes, we're just going to accelerate that mass exodus out of the state. So raising taxes, no, I mean, we're already viewed as a highly taxed state to begin with. And at some point, we just can't get blood from a stone. So why are we, can you raise taxes? It's probably what'll happen. It's probably what's going on, but they're going to go after the property owners, the real estate owners.
Right. I heard this, I read somewhere about if we taxed, the top 3% of our population, the wealthiest people that are out there, if we not only taxed them, but took their entire revenue as a tax, it still wouldn't cover our debts. So I don't see that one as any kind of an option. What if we sold off our assets?
Define asset.
I love that, right? Is it generating a revenue stream for us right now? So if that's the case, I would say maybe an asset that we have are our toll booths, right? So sell our toll booths to China. Is that an option?
Well, not to me, it isn't. No, but I mean, they're gonna have to pull out all the stops here because I don't know if we have many bullets left in the gun here, so to speak. So
how about the ports in Dubai? How about our military equipment?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't define military equipment as an asset because it's not technically generating a revenue stream for us now. But if they sold it to somebody, it would be.
Sure.
So I don't see that as an option. I don't see us ever doing anything like that. How about if we and we've talked about this, we could steal it. We could create a war. Let's go to Canada. Let's take over that country. Let's take their land. I don't see that as an option. I can hear the train going by you.
You can hear that?
Yeah.
Wow, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, look at how would we steal other property when we can't even manage what we have?
Right.
I mean, think about it. This is just common sense. I mean, why do I want to take on more when I can't even handle what I'm doing now? This is crazy.
That's such a great statement. It's so true. Right. So that one's out the window. We kind of put the kibosh on that. How about technological innovation? And I'm talking about the US, but we're in this struggle. We're in this fight right now with everybody. It's not just the US. Everybody's fighting, for biotech, nanotech, energy, solar, fracking, whatever it is, and how is that going to get us out of this mess? Could it?
Look, I think it's going to have to be a number of things. But again, who the hell am I? I have more questions than I do answers. And I think if we can raise the level of the questions we're asking, by simplifying them to the most basic core concepts, I think that's where we start. But where does it end? God, who knows? If anyone tells you that they do know, they're lying. Nobody knows.
But what are we doing right now? I mean, obviously we're printing money. So isn't that the solution that we're going after? Isn't that what that's what we're trying to do right now? We're trying to print money, which in essence is going to cause inflation. Which is what we're talking about, and talking about the devaluing of the dollar.
Well, but inflation is their goal. They're printing money on purpose to create the inflation, to create the activity, to create the demand. That's how our economy works. But that's going to run into the artificial intelligence wall where you're bringing costs down and we're printing money faster to try and drive inflation up. Right. So what does that all mean? I mean, it's just we're running against nature, and nature always wins eventually. So I think that's what we're looking at. And that's where it's going to get interesting. I mean, it's already interesting is a very generous word, but it's right now, God, I mean, the old model doesn't work and we don't seem to be getting the message. So eventually it's going to blow up. And I think the old school approach of print money, stimulus, quantitative easing, all these fancy phrases you can throw at people, it's not going to work. And we're going to be forced into a reset. And if you think about it, necessity, the mother of invention, we're going to have to get creative, but eventually some of these, I don't know what you call them, prognosticators that are talking about this type of stuff right now they're going to be looked at as prophets that said, hey, look, we were talking about this for years, but because it didn't happen the day after they said it, everyone was, they're full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about. So now it's going to happen, but what's going to trigger it? Who knows? Maybe it's the pensions being unfunded. It's the lack of jobs that aren't coming back from being lost from the pandemic. I'm seeing on the ground just people's reactions. Just last night, I'm seeing a steady flow of people that come in, sit down at the bar, and where are you from? New York. I need a drink. So you pour them a drink. And they sit down and they start out with, don't get me started in the hands, and then they have a drink or two and they start getting fired up, and everyone's tired of being locked down. Now, I don't know where to go with that, because you look and you go, you have to treat the pandemic with a certain respect that it needs. People are dying. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying. But how do we address that in the most constructive way without crushing our economy at the same time? Who would ever want one of these jobs running, governing a state, any sort of leadership role where you're constantly in a battle every day? How do you do that? I mean, my God, it's just, and then that's what creates the environment we have now. So
I think people are burying their heads in the sand right now, though. A lot of people out there just want to pretend like, okay, this is just on it's going to take its course. We're going to get through this and everything will be back to some level of normalcy, where, you devalue the dollar so much. You've got to really be thinking, if you do have any money in your savings, if you have cash, if you have, where is it and how can you deploy it in such a way that it's going to give you the best return in the future? And we don't know what that is. But, being in real estate, our job is to look at it and say, okay, we're always complaining that the values, real estate values right now appear to be too high. But let me ask you this: if real estate values are too high right now and you can lock in a mortgage, then, and the value of the dollar is dropping, so the present value of the dollar today is much greater than it would be, why wouldn't you overpay for a piece of real estate and lock in that payment, especially if it's multifamily, and have somebody else in the future continue to pay off your mortgage as your rents go up over time? Sure. But yet your mortgage payment doesn't. Why doesn't that make sense?
I get it. Like I said, you're tying it to something that has value, but again, if it's not paying you, it's not technically a real asset. You're not having somebody else pay for it. So, I don't want to split hairs here, but at the same time, it's like, what do we think about the future value of real estate? If you just buy a new home and you pay a premium price for it, and down the road it corrects, what are the odds that it's coming back up if we don't have enough economic activity and small businesses and people stimulating the local economy? Certain areas will be fine. I think places like Mystic will always do very well because it's a destination. There's people coming from New York City, from Boston, all over the place. But for your run-of-the-mill community out there, what's the likelihood you ever get your money back?
That's a loaded question right now, because as we're looking at this thing again with everything that's happening in our economy, we're of the mindset that these bubbles are formed by the government's ability to manipulate interest rates, and also banks having the ability to manipulate the back end ratios to make things more liquid and more appealing. If that doesn't exist, and we won't get into that now, in the future, then the market cycles, there may not be a market cycle. It could somewhat flatten out because you don't have those things driving it other than supply and demand.
All right, so then cut the legs off from under this thing altogether and make a simple statement. Say, look, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, I mean, those are different circumstances. I'm not talking about that. But if the government just stopped printing money and pumping it into the economy on a daily basis or a periodic basis, what would happen to the economy?
It completely fall. It drop.
Yeah, but it would be controlled by its own forces as opposed to being manipulated. So,
and that's what they don't want to have happen.
Well, but they're only postponing the inevitable. And when it does, a small forest fire is healthy. That burns the underbrush and keeps things clean. But if you keep postponing that forest fire, eventually it just burns the whole forest down. And I hope I'm wrong, but it seems like, from what I read, a lot of the people that I read, the people in the know, so to speak, that's what they're saying, and it's going to get ugly. But I hate to sound negative. I really do. I want to have an upbeat message here, but we're just having a real conversation here.
This is just, that's what I love about this. It's just off the cuff.
Yeah.
Let's continue on, maybe with another conversation at some point. We can even pull in, AI and how that's it could potentially affect things. Well, it is going to affect things, jobs and whatnot. But till we talk again, I appreciate your time.
All right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.